so excited this morning to be here with you today to discuss some of the challenges, some of the hurdles, as well as some of the successes that we have had as African American women. The title of our panel is We Outside. A lot of people don't really know what that means. Do you all actually know what that means? Okay. When my staff brought to me this title, I didn't know what it was. I said, well, what is it? What does it mean? And they explained to me what it meant, and I loved it. What we outside means is that we are no longer keeping things to ourselves. We are talking publicly about some of the issues, the challenges, the struggles that we have. Because if we continue to keep things to ourselves inside of closed doors, we will never be able to share those experiences with other mothers, mothers to be. And we found that that's the way that we're able to help each other is when we're honest about some of those issues and problems that we have. So that's what we outside means. We are talking and having conversations about breastfeeding challenges and issues so that we can help other mothers. So I'm Tiffany Rice. I am your moderator for the next hour. And so bear with me as we kind of get through all of our questions. We're just gonna play it by ear. We also had a few technical difficulties this morning. So we may go maybe 10 minutes or so past the hour just to make up. We'll just see how our time goes. I also wanna welcome our online audience. Welcome, thank you so much for pulling out some time to be here with us today. We also ask that you submit any questions that you have. We are very interested in the questions that you may have from your own upcoming breastfeeding experience that you may be having soon. Maybe you're currently breastfeeding and you may have some challenges, or you just have questions that you'd like to hear those answers from our panel. So please submit any questions that you have, as well if there's anything else, if you can't hear for any reason online, let us know that as well so that we can make the adjustments on our end. Okay, let me also start by saying that we are not presenting ourselves today as medical doctors, as researchers, or as breastfeeding experts. We are here presenting ourselves as moms who have breastfed one child, a couple of children, and sharing those experiences with one another. And I am excited to hear, because even though the panel is here, I don't know your stories. And so I'm really excited to hear what you have to say in regards to your breastfeeding journey. So with all of that being said, why are we having this conversation? Why do we need Black Breastfeeding Week? Why is this discussion important to have in our community? And why is this conversation even important to the healthcare system? I'd like to share, first of all, a few facts with you before I introduce the panel. Black mothers have the lowest rates of breastfeeding initiation, which is 74.1, as well as continuation at 6 months, which is 44%. And 12 months is at 24.1, compared with all other racial and ethnic groups in the US. Black women also are 2.5 times less likely to breastfeed than other racial groups. Black mothers are 9 times more likely to be given formula in the hospital than other racial groups. Black mothers are less likely to breastfeed their preterm babies, one of the most important times that we know, both before and after they're discharged from the neonatal intensive care unit. One study also found that just 25% of Black mothers were able to provide breast milk for their babies after they left the NICU. One last fact, according to one systematic review of breastfeeding interventions among US women, revealed that low rates of breastfeeding add more than $3 billion per year to medical costs for mothers and child. If 90% of the US families followed the recommended guidelines to breastfeed, it would save $13 billion to the economy. And what that means is that the more we breastfeed, the healthier we are as mothers and children. Okay? So what's our goal? So now that we have some statistics, what's our goal here today? We want to just simply highlight breastfeeding disparities and discuss how breastfeeding barriers can be reduced among women of color, and to raise awareness about breastfeeding related illnesses in the Black community, okay? So without further ado, I want to introduce you. I would like our listening audience to know who you are. So tell us your name, how many children, child or children that you've breastfed, for how long, and anything else that you'd like to share with us at this time. Ms. Vanessa.
Good morning. Thank you for having me here. My name is Vanessa Kelly, and I breastfed 2 of my 4 children, and I breastfed them for 4 and 6 months. So the first one I breastfed to almost 6 months, and the second one to 4 months. So she was a little hungrier ahead of me, so that's why.
Good morning. My name is Priscilla. I have 1 child and I breastfed for about 2 months. I did have issues with my milk supply, and that's the reason I breastfed for 2 months and I had to switch over to formula.
Good morning. My name is Brittany. I have 2 children. I breastfed 1. My youngest, she was premature. So it was a lapse. It was about 2 weeks after she was born, while she was in the NICU, that I was approved to breastfeed. So I had no milk supply. It was very rough. I only breastfed maybe 2 months, and that was it.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Sharon Stone. I've breastfed 4 children. My first child, I breastfed her for about 2 months. And my middle 2 sons, I breastfed them for about 5 months. And my last son, I breastfed for a year.
Good morning. My name is Sandra Marshall, and I have 2 sons. One's adopted, but the first son I breastfed for one year to the day.
Good morning. My name is Ashley Gooden Stewart. I breastfed 3 children. The first one for 1 month, the second one for 15 months, and then the last one for 2 years.
Good morning. My name is Alexis Johnson, and my situation is a little different. I do not have any children, nor have I breastfed, but I do have a 1-year-old godchild that I went through the breastfeeding journey with her. I do plan in the future to have children, and my ultimate goal is to exclusively breastfeed. So I'm happy to be on the panel and hear everyone's perspective.
thank you. And so I've already introduced myself. I am a little biased because I grew up in WIC. So it was all about breastfeeding. And so I actually breastfed my two children. My oldest is 12, exclusively breastfed them for 1 year. And so I was very, very excited about that. So let's just jump right in. Thank you for introducing yourself. Our first question, as an African American mom, how did you make the decision to breastfeed your child? Was it encouraged by family, friends, doctor, maybe a program? And if neither, what factors played a part in your decision making? So how did you make that decision to breastfeed?
With my first son, I was young. I was not married yet. And so the breastfeeding counselor came in several hours later, maybe toward the end of the day. And the nurses, the nursery had already assumed I was going to formula feed. So they gave me the brand everybody knew a formula. They already had modeled that for me. No one talked to me about if I wanted to breastfeed. They just kind of assumed I did not want to. I had given it some thought that I might want to breastfeed, but again, my friends and my family, my mom was like, yeah, sure, you should do it. But my girlfriend was like, girl, don't do it, because all the things they say about breastfeeding, you're not gonna look right later on. So I was like, okay. But when the breastfeeding counselor came into the room, she encouraged me. She told me how good it was for the baby and that I should just try it. And so she helped me to help the baby to latch on. And so that's how I breastfed him, but I only breastfed him for the 4 days that I was in the hospital. After which I decided that it seemed like it was going to be a little cumbersome at home. And so with the manual pump and all of that. And so I just decided to take the medication that would dry my milk up. So I did that with the first one. But with the my second child, it was several years later, and I was married, and I decided I wanted to give it a try. And so we did start breastfeeding him. And initially, I went into the hospital knowing that everybody knew that I wanted to breastfeed him. And so they helped me to latch on, and I breastfed him for 5 months. So it was a good one. And the next baby was a girl, and she was much prettier. So I wasn't able to keep up with her demand. And so she only breastfed for 4 months. So, yes, and I did have a preemie baby, the last one, which I was unable to breastfeed because we were separated for so long. So yeah, my milk never came in for him.
Okay, all right, thank you.
I had conversations with my provider and my mother also about breastfeeding. That's what encouraged me to breastfeed. And I actually found out through my mother that it's myself and my brother that we were breastfed also. So I was encouraged about the benefits from breastfeeding, and that's what encouraged me to try with my child.
I was encouraged by I believe they're called lactation specialists that comes to the room. But prior, I had never had that conversation with family, friends, my doctor. We had never had that conversation. I didn't know anything about breastfeeding, the benefits, anything. So it was kind of a spur at the moment, sort of okay, I'll give it a try. So I was glad that she came because until then I had no knowledge, no information on it. So it was at that moment that she came in afterwards, of course, because I didn't have any milk supply. It was just kind of, okay, let's start the process. This is what you do. So she came in, she showed me what to do, things like that. And so that's how I started.
So with my first child, there was a lactation counselor that did come in and showed me some of the things that I needed to do as far as nursing her. I wanted to nurse her myself, even though I wasn't breastfed as a child. I just heard that, that was a good way to bond with your baby and that it was the best way to get nutrients for your baby. And so I was really gung-ho, but I ran into a lot of problems. And so a lot of my milk didn't last, and so that's why I only breastfed her for 2 months. For my middle two sons, I started getting a little bit more used to what I needed to do, and so I was able to nurse them a little bit longer. But one of the things that I wish I had was a little bit more support. My mom didn't really, she suggested that I didn't do it. That she came from a different time. She was a working mother with 5 kids. And so it just wasn't convenient for her to do that. But it was something that I wanted to do myself, but ran into quite a few challenges.
For me, it was a little different. My family encouraged, well, I was voluntold. I didn't get the beforehand information about breastfeeding. My mother-in-law walked in the room after her first grandson was born, and they were binding me. I didn't know anything about why they were doing it. They didn't say. And she said, "What are you doing?" No, but she worked in the delivery room. And she said, "Oh, no, we don't do that. We don't do that." I didn't have a clue, but she made them unbound me, and from that point on, the grandmother committee was on it. And so that's how I started breastfeeding.
With my firstborn, my journey was going to WIC classes, so I knew the health benefits for me and baby for breastfeeding. But I knew I was a working mother, and I was living in an area where I didn't have the support of family and friends. So I knew it would be difficult. So during that time, I made the decision to supplement. So when I had the baby, I was in the hospital. That was very positive about breastfeeding. I had the lactation nurse come and encourage me, encourage baby, "Hey, your mom has all this nice warm milk. Let's get you eating. Like, this is the best option," because he really didn't take to the formula that they was trying to give him. And then I just felt the pressure, like he just needs to eat. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna work on this at home. I got discouraged, going through postpartum a little bit. So it was difficult. But with my last two, despite my work schedule, working all these hours, I was determined to stick with it. And that's why I stuck with it as long as it was, because I just wanted my babies to be healthy, because I know the challenges my firstborn had, and the formula was too harsh on his belly, and I just wanted better options.
My interest for breastfeeding actually came from school. I actually come from a family that was more so formula fed, not breastfeeding. I'm the oldest of 5. I don't recall my mother ever breastfeeding. And so with that, and I believe it's a convenience thing, like you said, there are multiple children, they're working hard. So it's just not a convenience to really sit and breastfeed. So when I was in school and we learned about breastfeeding and what it is and the benefits of it, I became interested. But I believe working here at WIC is really what gave me that interest of exclusively breastfeeding. It's just beneficial, and I feel like that's mothers, us as women and Black women, that's our superpower, is that our body is created to create and also feed. So I want to take that advantage.
Thank you. And I'm with Alexis as well. I started with the WIC program when I was 23 years old. So right out of college, I started with WIC. And so pretty young, knew nothing about breastfeeding. All of your classes that you take doesn't, give you information. Your maternal classes and, certain classes that you take in school does not give you the information in detail that you would need to make an informed decision about breastfeeding. When I started in WIC, of course, WIC is nutrition education, breastfeeding support program. How can you not love and know, once you get all the knowledge about breastfeeding, make a decision to breastfeed? I was in WIC over a decade, teaching other mothers that it's the best, all the benefits, the positioning and all of that good stuff. So, and I was also a fertility patient that I'll go into a little more detail later as well. So I was pretty much an older mom once we finally hit the jackpot with our little baby. It took us 8 years to finally have our little one. So of course I was I was ecstatic when that happened. But of course, like I said, being in WIC, educating moms for that long about the benefits and how good it is and so on, I naturally, that is how I got the idea that I wanted to exclusively, if I could, if at all possible, my goal was to exclusively breastfeed for at least a year. And that is exactly what I did. So I'm very proud of that. So while on your breastfeeding journey, what barriers, some of you mentioned kind of some of the barriers with people telling you different things, and it wasn't known, it wasn't a lot of knowledge and information in your families. And I heard one person say that a friend was very supportive as well. But on your journey, what barriers or challenges did you face while breastfeeding? Were there any challenges that you faced, especially in the workplace or in the public setting? So what challenges? Were there any other challenges that you maybe didn't mention that you faced as a breastfeeding mom? What challenges were those, if any?
The only challenge that I really had was initially with the first baby. I just didn't know a lot about breastfeeding until the lactation counselor came in and started explaining to me the health benefits of it. And I already, just listening to my friends, that my mom didn't have any children, so I was adopted, so she didn't have that breastfeeding knowledge to go on. And she said she knows that it's good for the baby and that I should if I could. And so she was basically just relying on whatever I wanted to do. And I decided to try it. And I did try it in the hospital, and it just seemed like, it was good for him, but it was going to be difficult to continue when I got home because the pump looked very dangerous. It was back in the day, so it looked very, and I was a little intimidated. Let me say that. I was a little intimidated by it. And then the lactation counselor was telling me everything I would need to do, and I was like, okay, all right. So I opted to do it for the first few days and then not again. I went to formula for him. But for the other two, I felt a little bit more prepared that I could do it, and I wasn't working. And so I did do it, and I did enjoy it. It was successful. And having other children, of course, your mom and so that was the only challenge. This is just balancing baby and life and wife.
As far as challenges while breastfeeding, the only challenge I feel like that I faced would be my supply coming in. So when I had my child, I was not working, so I breastfed as much as possible. But I also had to implement bottle feeding too to make sure that my child was full. So the only challenge I had was my supply.
So some of the challenges that I faced, of course, my baby was premature. So while she was still in NICU, I went ahead and went back to work. And so at that time I was still pumping. So I believe my challenge came in one, I was limited on the bonding time because she was only allowed out of her incubator 30 minutes a day. So that was a challenge for me as well. But also when I went back to work, there was nowhere for me to breastfeed or to pump. And so I had to talk to my director, and I'm like, look, I need to pump. And so they kind of had to find a closet, like clean it out and just find somewhere for me. And then the other challenge was finding time to pump. I was a case manager at that time. I had a 120 person caseload. So it was trying to find the right time, a stopping point, because you can't rush pumping. Of course, I didn't have some milk supply to pump anyway. I could barely pump an ounce. So it was just very discouraging. It was challenging at times.
Okay, so with my first child, I ran into a whole lot of problems from the get-go. Even though there was a lactation counselor, my daughter was a very aggressive nurser, I like to say. She was Baby Shark before Baby Shark was a thing. She would latch on, but she wasn't latching on correctly. And so that caused me a lot of pain. So my breasts were very sore. There was a lot of bleeding and everything. And so that was very painful. So that kind of led to me just nursing her for 2 months. But also I was a working mom. And at my job, it didn't really support you going and pumping. And the machine is kind of intimidating. I gotta admit, it is. I mean, even with pumping, that was very uncomfortable for me. And I wasn't producing enough milk because, of course, I wasn't pumping enough. Well, I was in pain, so I was sore. And so by the time I got to my middle 2 sons, I kind of start getting the hang of things and start using ointments and different things, warm compresses that nobody had ever told me about that before. So by the time I got to my 4th son and I had it all down, I was able to use the compresses and the ointment and definitely nurse him for a lot longer.
Okay, I would say the only challenge that I had at the time is, I'm dating myself, but the only challenge I have is that it really wasn't cool to breastfeed in public. And by public, I mean in the living room of your home. You know, you had to steal away to a quiet room by yourself. And so that would make things like travel or things like that kind of, impossible. So, at that point I had to implement formula, but I still breastfed at home. But the stigma with breastfeeding in public was unbelievable at that time. You didn't even really tell people that you were breastfeeding because then they would start to give you advice, so why not?
For my firstborn, when I returned back to work, they knew that I would be breastfeeding. We had plans set up. They set aside a nice spacious room. It was me and another woman that had this designated room. They gave me increments of 15-minute additional breaks, probably like 4 or 5 of them. So the whole setup was comfortable. I was supported in that aspect for it to be corporate. However, I did step down from my decision to continue with the breastfeeding. But I started working from home for another big corporation. And they had the whole idea, we're family oriented. If you need time to just leave, you can do that. But that was fine. But when it came to me actually having the breaks to breastfeed and pump, it didn't happen. It didn't occur. So what they wanted me to do is to take away one of my personal 15-minute breaks with this corporation to do everything I needed to do. And I'm like, that's no way possible. I have to, disassemble my breast pump. I need to clean it. I need to make sure it's sterilized. I need to, freeze my bags and everything. I have to make sure I have enough supply for my child to go to childcare. They didn't have no understanding. So I had one of the workers, even though it was from home, one of the workers that was in Florida was emailing me, here's your rights as a mother, here's a pamphlet, this is illegal what they're doing. You should sue them. I didn't have a leg to stand on. I'm gonna sue you, I'm probably gonna get $1,300 or something like that, and then I'm paying all these legal fees. But eventually, of course, that job didn't work out. My last baby was a few months old, and they just had a reduction within agency. So I was able to exclusively breastfeed him. And so that's why I was in a position to breastfeed him for 2 years. So I was proud of myself for that. But as far as the stigma with breastfeeding, I do agree with that because I would be out in public and my husband encouraged me, hey, you're not going in that nasty bathroom to breastfeed my child. You're feeding my child. Just make sure, you're covering up. It's okay. But when I was out with friends, however, oh no, you're not going to do that in front of me. That doesn't look right. That's, so distasteful. you need to go in the bathroom. And I'm like, okay, I guess if I'm gonna hang out with y'all and, this is making y'all uncomfortable, well, let me just go in the bathroom with my baby, but, that was not the support I was looking for as far as with the friends.
So directly, I do not have any barriers, but indirectly, with my godchild, her mother did decide to breastfeed in the beginning. And we spoke about breastfeeding before while she was pregnant. Fortunately, she had a friend and a godmother that worked for WIC. So of course she asked for my input. She only breastfed for a couple of months. She had some health issues that caused her to make the decision to stop breastfeeding. Her supply was very low. She did have a mass in one of her breasts, and then my godchild did have a tongue tie. So she ultimately just decided, because my godchild, she was so fussy and she just felt like she was not getting enough. She made the decision, and I supported her either way it go. It just felt like a barrier for me because I wanted to be there for her in ways I couldn't. I didn't have a personal experience to say, hey, keep going, we can overcome this. But we did talk about her experience with WIC and who she experienced there, because she's at a WIC at a different clinic. And the lactation consultant there was great. She was very supportive. She literally would call her every day. If she had issues in the midst of breastfeeding, she'll say, hey, okay, so let's try this, let's do this. So she was definitely supported in the situation. I wish we could do more, but my godchild is growing healthy, so that's all that matters.
Yes.
Okay, speaking of the tongue tie, my last two had them. And I felt very discouraged to breastfeed at first. But with my daughter, I would come to WIC, I would talk to Miss Jennifer and the other breastfeeding consultants, and we stuck to it. I made the decision not to, do the surgery to have the tongue tie removed. And she was very successful with it, healthy weight, everything, very healthy. So with my last child, he had the weight on him, but that tongue tie, man, I had to go and get the surgery. And, at that point I felt it's okay, we're gonna get through this, and we did. 2 years.
Thank you. So I had many challenges, but minor somewhat. I learned early on that just because you teach, just because you're helping others, and you think you know everything about breastfeeding, doesn't mean that you're gonna be successful. So one of my very first challenges in the hospital, I was ready. I knew about, the WIC program prepared me for the hospital experience, what to do, what to say, what to tell the nurses and everything. So right after delivery, I was in my room. I thought I had my positioning right. I thought I had baby right, thought I had pillows right. And so the nurse came in and she was just doing her regular business in the room. And so she looked at me and she said, you need help? What are you doing? And I said, well, I'm about to breastfeed. So this nurse, which is such an angel, she shifted me up, she pushed my pillow, she got me in the right position, and she grabbed baby and grabbed me and everything, and I was breastfeeding. But guess what? Over a decade, remember, I was teaching mothers what to do. So I think it's important to know that just because you teach and educate and you know all the good stuff and the benefits, doesn't mean that your experience is gonna be perfect. So it was a beautiful experience with the help of the nurse as well. One other minor challenge that I remember experiencing, it was the first time that I needed to breastfeed in public. Now, my husband was very, very supportive with everything. However, and typically as a new mom, my baby breastfed like clockwork every 2 hours. So when we were out running errands, I would always make sure that maybe I breastfed in the car, before we go run our errands, so that I didn't necessarily have to stop in the middle. The baby was taken care of. So it turns out we were going into Sam's one day, and baby was hungry. And so it was time to feed. And remember, I'm from WIC. So, and I know my rights and I know what I can do. So when I sat in some of their furniture, you know, they have, how Sam's have some of the couches and things. That probably wasn't the best thing to do, but you know, maybe I was gonna purchase, maybe I wasn't. But that was the first time that I breastfed my baby in public, and I can tell you, my husband almost had a minor panic attack. So for men, I can tell you, not being, very supportive, very supportive. But when it came time to nurse in public, I saw a whole different person. But it wasn't hysterical, it was minor, but he pulled it together because he saw that I was gonna do it, and we survived. And so after that, it was just easy going with breastfeeding in public. And I was discreet. Not every mom is discreet, neither do you have to be discreet. It is your right to breastfeed how you wanna breastfeed. So even with me having blanket over and all that good stuff, it was so interesting how he performed that day. So that was some of my challenges. So give us a little information on how you coped with your stress during these times. Did you have support? And everyone don't necessarily have to. If you want to just pass the mic on, you can. What methods did you find how did you cope with some of these challenges to make it easy for you to continue to meet your personal goals? Do you remember how did you get through?
Well, I'll definitely say I did have support. My sister, even that day that the nurse came into the room, as you said, when your nurse came in, she positioned you, things like that. You know, I remember after giving birth, I was telling my sister, I was like, I'm so tired. I was like, you're gonna have to pick up my boob and put it in the pump. And she was like, oh my God. And so definitely, like, I remember those, the things that we laugh about today, but I was like, I was too tired. Like, I just did not have the strength. So, but just that, and then of course, like getting home, you know, my husband, he was very supportive. He was sitting right next to me on the couch while I'm trying to pump, trying to breastfeed. You know, she wasn't latching on, things like that. She was losing weight. So all of that was very stressful. But definitely the support of my family. So.
I had the support of my mom, my sister, and my husband. As far as like with Brittany, I can really resonate with that story because when it came to all of my children, you know, my sister, her nurturing side came out. She doesn't have children, however, she picked up my breast, especially with the firstborn, and was like, drink milk. You know, you know where to go from there. But she was very supportive through it all. Like, man, I you know, I don't have a lot of, you know, information to tell you, but I just want you to stick with it. You got to do this. You know, it's a lot of health benefits. You want to heal. You know, you want to eliminate those risks like breastfeeding, you know, breast cancer and everything else. You know, so she was like, just stick to it. She was so motivational.
I did have tremendous support. However, people that came after me, that stigma was still there and they didn't have the support. So I became the support for them. But yeah, I did have great support.
I did have a lot of great support from my husband, I gotta admit. He's a medical provider, and so he was really there for me in my time of need, because with my first one, I really didn't know a whole lot for sure. And so he helped me. Just bonding with your baby. I mean, just that time that you're with your baby and you're feeding your baby and just looking down at them, that helped me a lot. I know that sounds kind of cheesy, but yeah.
It absolutely does not sound cheesy. Like I mentioned before, I was a fertility patient. And so after 8 years of trying to have baby, and finally getting baby, I can tell you, for me, it was just a joy, waking up every 2 hours. and let me back up, going through failed treatments that, throughout the 8 years. And so then finally getting the opportunity to have baby, I was happy to wake up every, 2 hours to breastfeed. So I didn't have many challenges, I would say, during that time. But because we were just so excited to have baby there, and waking up was just a joy and a pleasure for me. But I coped also just, I think, sleeping when baby slept. Some of those basic things that you need to do when you're in I call it the trenches. When baby is definitely on that clock, already know what time it is when baby wakes up, and you just know what time it is. So I kind of just slept when baby slept and was ready to wake up when it was time to wake up. It made it a little easier. So Miss Alexis, this question is going to be specifically for you. As a young Black woman who may choose, we don't always need to assume that every mom is interested. Sometimes our society just thinks everyone is going to be interested in having a baby and breastfeeding. We're very careful here in WIC as well. We encourage, we educate on breastfeeding, but we also respect every mom's decision in what you do. So Miss Alexis, as a young Black woman who may choose to start a family one day and breastfeed, do you feel supported and encouraged? I know you're in WIC, but if you were not in WIC, if you did not have all the knowledge that WIC has given you since you have been in the program, do you think you would be supported in other ways by other programs?
That's funny, I was just thinking about WIC-wise, yes. If I wasn't with WIC, I'm not really sure, truthfully. Before coming into WIC, like I said, I didn't make the decision of exclusively breastfeeding. When you go in the store, you immediately see formula. They don't promote breastfeeding. You don't necessarily see commercials about breastfeeding. You'll see formula, what the formula is, the different types of formula, but you don't see breastfeeding and that promotion of breastfeeding that we probably should be doing now. Not only as a woman, but as a Black woman, you see the news and you see the stories about healthcare providers where they feel like maybe you're harming your child if you decide to breastfeed, and they feel that you should be using some type of formula, or they immediately assume that you want formula, that you're not going to take the steps of breastfeeding. Also, we discussed the public feeding and just having that access in the workplace. Some places just do not support that, especially if it's fast paced. You just don't simply have the time to do it. They don't support it. So if I wasn't with the WIC, depending on my situation, I'm not sure if I would have had that support or that encouragement to breastfeed. Now, as far as WIC, we do have the access and we now have the resources and the connections. But outside of this, some of my moms that I counsel or speak to, they didn't know what WIC was. They didn't know that those resources were there. Even if you're not on WIC, you can call us and we can give you those resources. Not too many people are aware of those. And then they're not cultural competent. They're not set up for just Black women. You have to understand that everyone's body is different. The way they live is different. Their socioeconomic is completely different. So you have to understand those situations. And if we don't have those resources and that access, they're not supported where they need to be.
Absolutely. So with that being said, what kind of advice? I mean, there are a lot of different circumstances, like you just mentioned, socioeconomic differences, just so many things. Even our younger generation right now, they believe in a lot of different things that maybe we didn't have when we were making the decision to breastfeed our own children. So what advice? I mean, there's a lot of things that's happening, and it's a lot of things have been in place for a long time. People have always sexualized the breast. I mean, there's lots of things. And so a lot of young people also feel that it's gonna slow them down, it's gonna, it's gonna make their breasts sag. I mean, it's so many beliefs that the younger generation and the younger moms have that may deter them from providing one of the most healthiest things for the baby. What advice do you have for them? What would you tell them to encourage them to breastfeed? And I always say, what if they don't have programs like WIC, when they come in and they have access to breastfeeding peer counselors, when they have lactation consultants, they don't have the experts in breastfeeding? What do they do? What would you tell them?
So definitely what I've learned throughout my journey is to just share the knowledge. Definitely, like I said, growing up, there wasn't conversations that my mom had with us. I don't even recall my grandmother or any of my aunts speaking on breastfeeding or anything like that. So definitely passing down the knowledge. Like Ms. Sandra said, with her mother-in-law, they coming in and showing her what to do, things like that. So I think the more that we normalize breastfeeding, saying it's okay, but most importantly, do your research. Again, breastfeeding isn't for everyone. It doesn't fit into everybody's day-to-day schedule, just anything like that. So definitely do your research, but also talk with your physician. Because again, my physician never even asked me, was breastfeeding an option? And that's an issue. And that should be a conversation that you have. That should be, if you didn't hear from anyone else, the first place you hear about it. So definitely do your research, talk to your physician about the pros and cons, or just wanting to know more information, resources, things like that. So for me, definitely that's something that I'll be sharing with my daughters, and giving that as an option, letting that be their decision, but educate them, help them do the research and find out what's the better option for them.
Honestly, I actually encountered the opposite. I didn't have a lot of knowledge going in, and it wasn't promoted like it is now. I feel like the younger mothers now are exposed to it. They know their rights. They have more access to knowledge than I did. And the stigma you spoke of was for us back then. You'll have the sagging breast. It's going to be, where are you going to breastfeed at? So there was some deterrent to me going in that, oh, you don't want to have sagging breast, you don't want to breastfeed. So once I talked to the lactation counselor, she was like, no, it'll be fine. So that's why I initially tried with the first child and then embraced it with the second and third child.
I agree with Brittany. It has to do with education and research. Not just mothers, but as the doctors and nurses, they should want to be educated more on breastfeeding. Immediately, if they are not on WIC, they're going to talk to their physician or their doctor. They're going to find support somewhere, and they're going to go to their doctor. They feel like that's the expert, that's the specialist. And some of those doctors are just not specialized in that area. And so some organizations need to find some type of criteria or take some time to educate their doctors and their nurses, so that they feel that support, and doing research beforehand. I'm not pregnant. I don't plan to be pregnant anytime soon. But on Facebook, I am in so many groups with breastfeeding mothers. There's so many out there, so many support groups. You don't have to be pregnant. You don't have to have a child or be breastfeeding. They're there. They will talk to you. They will support you. They're there to give you their advice, their perspective, their experience. And so I love to just read about everything. I've found so many. They're there. The internet is so big right now. And you can find pretty much anything. So social media wise, like Ms. Vanessa said, it's not, you can say it's promoted more now and we understand our rights, but choosing to read more into them because they know, okay, we can go out in public and breastfeed, but what's the right, if somebody was to come up to you and challenge that, do you know what to say? And I mean, you really shouldn't have to explain yourself. It's your body and you own your own body. But do you know how to go about that situation? So just educating beforehand, during that pregnant stage, or even if you're considering being pregnant, knowing what's entailed with that.
And I'll have something to add to it. And I would also say too, maybe just doing research about like your breast pumps and things like that. I was paying $50 a week to the hospital to rent my breast pump. And somebody mentioned to me about WIC, and I was like, I had no idea. So I got on WIC and got the free breast pump. And it was I think I was at Bye Bye Baby one day, and they were like, well, you could get one through your insurance. So that's another option too, is to call your insurance and talk to them about what's offered for free as part of your plans, things like that. So.
Absolutely. Anyone else on this side?
About the pump. Because the pump became my friend.
Mhm.
At first, I was a little apprehensive about it, but that's what got me through, like with my last son, and I was able to go for a year. Because I was a pumping fiend. I could pump, and I had milk for him. And if somebody else was watching him, I'd just bring out the breast milk that I had pumped. So, and the other thing, you brought up schedule. Like you would time things around nursing your baby and everything. It also got to a point where I just didn't care what anybody believed. If I was going to breastfeed, I could breastfeed out in public. I put a little blanket on me, and I'm showing less than what they show at the beach. And so I just got more comfortable with myself too. But resources and, talking to people and asking people for information is very important too.
With my firstborn, I had resided in Austin, Texas at the time. So with their insurance plans, they were a little different than out here. So I'm not accustomed to, the plans that they have set up here for prenatal care and everything and postpartum. We actually had a lactation nurse through the insurance come to the house after the baby was born. And this is, information they gave us prior, that the nurse would come and view the safe sleeping, the crib, make sure that I was aware of what SIDS was, what to put in the crib, what not to put in the crib. So we had that open dialogue. She also, instead of them mailing my breast pump, she delivered it to me, gave me some bags of goodies, gave me some advice that she didn't even share with other people. So I think that we need that more in our region. Have these lactation nurses from the insurance, these regional nurses or whatever, come to the home, talk to the family, talk to the women. Cause I swear, I was really down bad. And this woman shared with me personally how she was in nursing school in homeless, telling me not to let go of my dreams or think that, because I have a baby, this is a burden. That I can overcome barriers. I can still breastfeed and do whatever I needed to do as a mom. And when I tell you I have accomplished more as a mother than anything in my life, that's something that I would want to tell the young people. Whether you breastfeed mom or you just concerned about your child being a fed mom. You are a woman, you are a mother at the end of the day, your life does not end. Just like she said, just center your schedule around your child and the breastfeeding, and you will be successful with that.
Thank you. So as I mentioned earlier, because we had a few technical difficulties in the beginning, we're gonna go just a little bit past 10. So I think I definitely wanna probably hit 2 more questions. Mental illness is big in our society right now. Many people deal with it publicly and also privately. And so I definitely wanted to get this question in. What advice or resources would you share with other Black mothers who are considering breastfeeding or who are struggling with mental illness issues after having their baby? So we all know that, the hormones change after delivery, lots of hormones going everywhere. And some moms suffer from many illnesses after that, postpartum depression, as well as some other more intense things and illnesses. So what advice would you give? Moms get a lot of different advice. It's not always Sometimes it's not helpful, and sometimes it could be hurtful, just depending on who is on the other side of that table giving the advice. But what do you think you would tell a mom who is going through those struggles and want to breastfeed?
I have in my family, last year in August, we got 4 new members to the family. And one of the mothers had lost a couple babies before she had a now 10-year-old. And last year in August, she had another baby. And now she's having some mental issues. And one of the first things that I wanted to do, tell her self-care. You know, we need to keep that uppermost, is self-care. But then I talked to my nephew and explained to him some of the things that men just don't, they're not aware of with having a baby. It's not just you have a baby and, you know, I bought you a son after 3 daughters, I bought you a son and everybody's happy. It doesn't work that way. So he was real encouraged to know that, you know, this is not something he may have to deal with forever, but you have to deal with the fact that she's having some mental issues right now.
Speaking of that, I am a infant loss survivor because of my firstborn. So what I would encourage a mother, whether postpartum depression or just maybe issues centering around breastfeeding, go to therapy, because I mean, therapy was the best thing that I could do for myself, joining some peer support groups. Also, Mother's Milk Club was a help for me, implementing that self-care, whether I was writing, reading, taking a walk, having somebody to watch the baby while I take a shower, or, you know, go to lunch by myself. But you do have to take care of yourself physically and mentally, because you have somebody dependent on you. So, I mean, even online forums, like it's resources out here, it's people that care and that want to listen to you.
Ms. Jennifer, no questions online? Online, if you have any questions, we have about 2 minutes before we wrap up. The last question, in closing out, since we have met our time, what are your thoughts? What are some of your hopes and dreams that you have for future Black breastfeeding moms? Lots going on that we've discussed, lots of barriers and challenges. What do you want to see? I mean, those statistics that was mentioned earlier before we started is huge. It's significant. We've talked a lot about getting knowledgeable, because of course I believe the more knowledgeable you are with the true benefits and how it truly helps, makes a big difference in what mothers choose to do. So from here, what would you like to see for Black moms, even our young moms who don't have all of the knowledge about breastfeeding, but yet we have so many illnesses with those moms and the babies too. What are some of your hopes and dreams that you have for our young, not only young, but all of our African American moms and babies?
So I would definitely say, first, just be confident in your decision, whether or not to breastfeed. You know, do your research, things like that. But I would love to see more resources within our community. A lot of times, you can only get resources, you know, depending on your income, or your household size is always attached to something that's put there to create a barrier. So I would like to see more programs where if I'm just finding out I'm pregnant or I just had a child, I can walk into your facility, no strings attached. I don't have to bring proof of income, you know, how many people in my household, things like that. And I think that would open up for a lot more people to be educated. You know, just because you're educated or you have a good paying job, things like that, that doesn't mean that you know the resources that are available to you. So I would just like to see more programs like that where everybody can walk in and obtain services.
I'd like to see more jobs in companies and industries really fully. I mean, when you are orientated to a new job, that should be part of the orientation. This is what we offer you in the event that you decide to, you know, have a baby or breastfeed, we accommodate you. I like to just see it accommodated in all aspects so that we don't have that, I want to breastfeed, I'm gonna be a mom, I want to breastfeed, but, you know, I want just them not to have those buts, especially when it comes to work, because a lot of people have to work. That's a part of your family planning, basically. And so I like that not to be a problem. More inclusiveness of breastfeeding and promotion, and letting you know it's okay.
Someone mentioned earlier about seeing commercials about breastfeeding, how we don't see commercials about breastfeeding. So that's something I would like to see, because I do not recall ever seeing commercials about breastfeeding, but you do see commercials about formula. So that's something I would like to see.
And be patient with yourself. Don't beat yourself up. You've heard on this panel, a lot of people have had problems with it, had trouble, and don't keep it to yourself. You know, maybe a public forum is not for you, but if you have somebody that you trust, you can confide in and you can talk with them, then that's what you really need. But be patient with yourself.
Anyone else on this side?
And because I've had those challenges, and because, you know, I breastfed, my goddaughter is like, she's now got a new baby, and I'm there to support her, and I'm telling her the same thing you said, Sharon, don't beat yourself up, be patient, it's gonna take time, you know, and she's doing beautifully with it. And every little bit of information that I get from WIC, I take it straight over there to her, you know, these are your rights, you know. So yeah, she's up to it, she's researching her rights and everything, so it's making it easier and helping her and coping with it.
Thank you. I think one of the goals that I personally have is to see us represented more in the media in a positive way. I think it's very important. We sometimes are not represented in the best way all the time. And we are sometimes not represented for all of the positive things that we do in our community and at home. And so that is my goal. When we click on the TV, I'd love to see more of our community in the media doing all the things that we do, but it's just not on there. So that's one of my goals and dreams that I want to see for our community. So as we're closing, Jennifer, I don't think we have any questions. So we're gonna go ahead and wrap up our panel. So again, the title of this panel was We Outside. And so what the discussion that we just had is exactly what that means. And the conversation has to continue. We don't need to continue to keep things inside to ourselves. We have to start sharing, whether it's breastfeeding, whether it's mental illness, no matter what it is. If I talk to you, I guarantee you, either you, your family, a community member is going through the same thing. And not until we begin to share the challenges and issues with one another will we begin to get help and know that it's normal and know that it's okay and know that it's okay to go get help for those problems. So in wrapping up, thank you so much. I just want to thank you for joining us today to discuss all of these challenges and barriers, successes, and our personal stories. It really meant a lot. I'd also like to thank our communications team, Brianna and Megan, who helped us a lot to get us started and to get this show and to get this panel on today. Also our IT, our Galveston County Health District IT, Mr. Aaron, did a lot for us to be successful today. And lastly, I want to thank the producer of this show, who is our breastfeeding coordinator at Galveston County Health District, Ms. Jennifer Bassett, who wanted to get this show on 3 years ago, but COVID came and she was adamant about us having a sit down to talk about our issues, our challenges, our concerns, and how we can help and how we can make a difference. So I thank you all. And that will wrap us up for today. And hopefully next year or the year after that, we can come back and have another discussion. Thank you.